If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah-blah-blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah-blah-blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
Blah-blah-blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
It's a molecule that really interacts, the endocannabinoid system with our endocrine system, with a lot of different anti-inflammatory pathways, with a lot of different neurotransmitter pathways related to relieving anxiety and stress.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica show. We are going to be chatting with Ben Greenfield a little bit later. Someone we've been thinking about having on for a couple of years now. We are going to have them, then we weren't, then we were, then we weren't. I was listening to some of Ben's podcasts a few years ago, some fascinating stuff. And then Ben tweeted out our vaccine debate episode, and that led to an interaction that got him on the show. And we're going to interview him here in a little while after we're done our lazy rambling intro here. Without further ado, I'll introduce my little co-host, Graham Ripped Calves Dunlops. How it going, buddy?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah, this was fun with Ben. I've been following him for a few years. Like, honestly, he's what got me into the whole biohacking thing for a while, which we were playing jingles of and all that. And I was trying all these different things. I mean, a lot of that was coming from his stuff. I mean, he's really on the leading edge of these extreme athletes that are doing tests on themselves and biohacking and following, the science.
Shooting stem cells into their penises.
Yeah. Doing dick research and all that. And I mean, he's like his own guinea pig. It's fantastic.
Did you shoot stem cells into your calves?
No, they're just fake.
They're fake? Botox?
Calves, yeah.
So big shout out to Graham's calves. They were pretty ripped.
All right, enough of the deep fakes. You found that. I can't believe you found that jingle. Would you go around playing all
it's
the
on the board. That's on the board, but none of the other new ones are. It's not, the board isn't always well thought out.
So yeah, for people that are new to the show and all that, you can skip ahead to the interview itself if you don't want to hear our lazy ramblings here. But this is where we usually get into listener emails, and sometimes we have some housekeeping to do.
Talk about our events.
Beg for support. Sometimes we do some heavy segments like geoengineering, which we might do in this one, or that type of stuff.
That's right. All that sort of shit is great. Some people say it's the best part of the show. Other people say it fucking sucks and they skip it. So go ahead and skip it. There'll be a timestamp in the show notes. And you can usually just hit your skip button ahead too if I remember to put in the marker, and if your podcast player supports that. Away you go, bye. So is there... Oh, I wonder if it's clear out. We might be doing a little sea setting before we go.
Tonight?
Yeah.
Sure.
You can summon something for me?
Sure, I'll try.
All right.
It doesn't usually work, though.
No?
I need to be with a group of people, a group of cool people. I can't do it on my own.
A group of cool people. Is that a shot? Is that a dig?
No.
Are you on again tonight? I find it hard to believe that you could be on two nights in a row.
On? What do you mean?
Well, you're in rare form during the Snake Brothers swap cast.
What does that mean?
At being witty and...
Really?
Yeah.
Was I?
Oh, look at you. You had a couple good digs, yeah.
That was our last episode we had out with the Snake Brothers. That's probably those guys bring it out of me.
You're keeping up in our mental in our ongoing game of mental gymnastics.
That's today. Okay. No.
I need a Joe Pesci Graham fucking mashup.
Is it weird that you're the second guy that's told me about mental gymnastics today?
Probably, yeah.
That's pretty weird. I haven't heard that term in a long time, and I've heard it twice today.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because normally you're more in my mental punching bag.
Exactly. So I was like ducking and weaving and punching back.
Did you eat any?
Like your mental sparring partner instead of just.
Well, I had gluten that day, but that shouldn't affect your performance because I was still on.
I've been ever since we talked to Ben.
You've been back.
This is like we recorded this about a month ago. Sorry for the delay, Ben.
Sorry, Ben.
I got a lot in the can.
Oh, the can's
But my
great.
diet's been off really bad ever since CAC. Yeah.
Off?
I mean, I kind of wanted to go to CAC and see, like 4 months to CAC and see. So I'm back up to my weight where I was before, gluten every day.
I'm on $14 bags of nuts instead of chips.
A little bit foggy in the mind and puffy in the body. It's good though, because it does make me realize that there was a difference.
I'm back on some things.
You know, it's hard until you relapse on your diet. It's hard to tell.
I'm back on milk.
How good it was. You're not even listening to me. You're just
Yeah, I'm
talking
listening.
about your own diet.
I'm back on milk. I'm trying to commiserate with you here, so you don't feel so bad. You're like you're just.
Well, I don't know what the big deal about milk is. Like,
Yeah, I'm back on the milk. Not as much. I've cut back, but I'm on it. Butter, nuts. I was off the nuts for a while. I'm on the nuts. I'm still off the wheat, but I'm less sticky.
How about the wheat?
Yeah. Honestly, I wanted to gain a little weight. I want to gain a little weight, and then I might.
You have a lot, like you're like skin and bones compared to when I met you.
Yeah, I got to gain a little weight, and I'm gonna. Yeah, I got a bike, so I was actually gonna bike here tonight.
Oh my God! Don't do that on your first ride, dude.
But, yeah,
it's a long ways. Like
it's not that far.
Your ass is gonna be sore. Like don't just start out small. Ride up your gravel road and back.
My ass got sore fast. Actually.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy.
It's the first time out on a bike. It's like,
is it stretching my ass for me somehow?
It's just bruising the bone.
Is it?
I mean, you could probably stretch it out if you want. I mean, you can, depending on the type of seat you got.
Yeah, I was actually going to come here tonight, and then I was like, I need the laptop, and I'd clean the cup.
Don't do
then I was like, it's going to be late, too. Do I really want to be riding home? And I don't have any, there's no reflectors on it.
Oh, my God. You're going to get knocked into a ditch. The back roads, no lights. There's dark in a dark bike.
Pitch black.
Just, you got to get a light. If you're going to ride at night, get a light. I'm telling you, it's not safe on those roads.
Well, I'd probably just drive off the road if a car was coming.
Just
and
wait for it to go. What if there's two coming and you can't drive off the shoulder because you're on that part between the water?
Where the lake is?
Yeah, the lake. The
game over.
Land bridge.
It's game over. That's how I go down. You just have to come and do that.
But why
terrible
you biking if you're trying to gain weight? That's not the way to do it. Like, bulk up, like eat more, lift some heavy weights.
I've actually been thinking about getting a gym membership.
It's so funny to me. I don't know why. I can take you to my gym for a guest thing and just see.
I'm gonna commit to some 12.
Let me take you once and then see if you're gonna like it or not.
Maybe I'll just buy a kettlebell.
I got some little barbells at home. Sometimes I use those.
I was doing a 7-minute workout thing for a while. It faded. Is that a problem? If I can't do 7 minutes, I shouldn't.
You're going to go get a gym membership? Like you live fucking miles away from the nearest gym. You're in the middle of nowhere. You just got to set something up. Make your own little thing. You know, this is what Ben would do. He'd probably have something in his backyard. He does some like
little run a thing, jump over some little hurdles.
Swinging a mace around probably or something. Like get yourself something functional. Do some functional strengthening.
Like a kettlebell?
Sure.
I could climb some trees.
I could go into the back and weaponry.
Climb some trees, get some swords. I'm not going to be that guy that's out in the yard fucking swinging swords and stuff. The neighbors are like, oh man, you must be really into fucking
martial arts.
What's that show called you guys all just finished watching?
Game of Thrones.
That's like the new thing, right? Instead of guys swinging lightsabers around, they're fucking swinging Game of Thrones stuff around. It's terrible.
I see a lot of guys on Instagram doing those medieval battles with they've got the armor and
we should get some.
Just hammering the
do you think that's a good workout?
You should see these guys.
Do you think it's a good workout?
Oh my God!
We should get some armor. We should get some armor and some swords.
Just beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah,
we could.
You know what? We could fucking talk to Brad and build a ring upstairs. We could build a fucking ring upstairs. We could have sword fights in there with armor, and we could have fucking other fights. What was the other fight?
Look, Sir Guy of Warwick just followed me or just liked our Instagram post. Look at him. Look at him.
We'll get those big
He's
fucking like
hot
fucking
off a run at
16-ounce
Scarborough
gloves.
Fair, coming to a Ren Fest near you. So he's an actual. I think he's an actual.
I think we crowd some
Look,
fun
he's a
some
knight.
fights.
Like he's a real knight. He's got that.
Right.
He can come in the back and just teach us how to use swords and stuff.
We could crowd fund some fights.
Have you seen these guys?
Hey, we'll
beat
do a
each other up?
pay-per-view. We'll do Grimerica pay-per-views. No, I haven't. We'll do Grimerica pay-per-views. We'll build a fucking ring upstairs, and we'll do fucking 16-ounce glove matches, and we'll like do a pay-per-view, and then we'll gear up. So we'll use the proceeds from that pay-per-view to buy swords and armor.
What's the 16? We're not going to buy that. We'll rent it. I know there's a shop down the road there.
Is there?
Yeah.
So we'll do a pay-per-view. We'll do a Grimerica pay-per-view.
That's for Halloween. And
where
all. They
we
probably
fight
don't
each
like it
other
either.
with swords and fucking armor. That would be. We could sell that out.
I'm telling you, dude, these guys they go nuts these days. They're, I see these guys all over the place. They're just kicking the shit out of each other with big maces and pole arms. Like they use the small axes, and then sometimes
I
they
could
do
get you on
two-weapon
reach.
fighting. Yeah, but I get you on power.
That's how you got to bulk up. It's coming. So what do we got? What do you got? What do you got?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do have some. I got an email that'll lead us to a couple segments. So why don't we start with that? I'm just browsing through my Instagram here because there's some. Usually, I get these.
Well, you're too slow.
battles in there and stuff. So.
It's the profound quote of the
What are you doing? I'm reading an email.
Darren, can you guess it? It's the profound quote of the week. Can you guess the human who spoke it or wrote it down? Profound
Wrote it
quote
down.
of the week.
These eyes. Okay, you ready?
I told you it was an email.
Well, you were taking too long, so I switched segments.
See, these guys are gonna beat each other up with swords.
I don't
me and you.
give a
That's
fuck.
me and
We've
you.
switched fucking no shields. There's no shields when we do it. It's just fucking hand to hand, two hands on the sword.
Two-handed or can you do
Two
can I do
swords?
two swords? Yeah, two-handed fighting, two-weapon fighting,
Okay.
or a double, or a two-handed.
Two hands on a heavy sword. Like knock you over when you catch it across the head sword. Okay. You're not doing the quote?
No, I told you it was an email from Dan. Hey guys, I don't know if this is the right form to contact you with random thoughts and observations, but I can't help to notice how much they've ramped up the geoengineering in the month of June where I live in the US. I've been paying attention to the skies for years now, and it seems like late spring, early summer of this year have given us more vaporous and sprayed down skies than I've ever seen before in my life. On social media, my friends from all across the country have been complaining about how bad the weather is, but none of them seem to notice that every 2 to 3 days of foggy, vaporous, grayed out Franken skies is always preceded by heavy chemtrails crisscrossing a normal blue sky. After 2 to 3 days, once the vapor clouds eventually disintegrate, the skies are normal for only about a half of a morning or afternoon before the jets are out to spray everything down once again. I know I may be describing chemtrails 101, but this year in particular, it seems like they're doing it on a repeat and giving us literally no breaks of sunshine, creating the new normal of vaporous, foggy, whiteout Franken skies. The sad part is how many of my social media friends are posting what they think is beautiful skies and sunsets when it's clear how unnatural all of them consistently look. Honestly, I'm writing you to get this off my chest because nobody, even my so-called open-minded friends, wants to hear about it or even understands what I'm talking about. The disinfo out there is real, and the norm among so-called rational people is to immediately attack this stuff as loony, despite the fact that Harvard and Yale have put out papers and proposals on stratospheric aerosol injections. My morale in the month of June has been my morale has been so low, my energy's been so low, my mood and body just seem different. Somehow I don't have the motivation to try to do anything about it. whenever in the past I would go down too far down a conspiracy rabbit hole, I would cut myself off for the sake of my own mental health. But now this isn't an option because every time I step outside, I see this hellish dystopian environment getting worse and worse by the day.
Fuck, maybe that's what we got to do with you, cut you off for a while.
Of course, I wouldn't go as far as saying I'm suicidal because I'm absolutely not, but it's really hard to want to get up in the morning when your body feels like shit. The world around you looks like a sci-fi fucking movie. I added the fucking there. And it seems like there's nowhere to hide from this stuff whatsoever. How do you stay positive in these conditions? I hope you or one of your guests can give your listeners a pep talk about how to deal with this craziness. Anyway, sorry for the rant. Just hoping you give me a little boost of morale because I'm feeling more isolated and hopeless than ever before in relation to all these conspiracy worries. And I consider myself a conspiracy research pro. Hoping some new perspectives on information can brighten my outlook. Take care, Dan.
I can't brighten your outlook, Dan. You're pretty spot on with most of that shit. I mean, you could try and be positive. Keep think happy thoughts.
I got the answer.
No, he doesn't.
Grimerica.ca/chats.
Oh, that's a good one. Or Grimerica.ca/support. That helps too. It actually, it's been shown in studies to fight depression. Also, so has this. Here you go. Coming at you.
If Maria supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasting.
The blah, blah, blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah,
Good vibes.
blah.
Good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
You take those good vibes, stick them in your pipe, smoke them. You'll feel much better, I promise. Don't take a picture of me. Fuck you. What else you got? You gonna do the quotes now? Should I replay the quote jingle, or can we just use the one from before? You said that was gonna stir up a bunch of segments.
Well, the thing
but I
is,
don't see how it's gonna.
I was trying to say go into the chats because there's a lot of cool people who's been very active lately. I can't even keep up on the chats, but it's a bunch of people in the Discord. They're sharing, talk about anything in a non-judgmental way. You'll find your peeps in there, and you get rid of this little.
Well, Russ went up 14 levels in like a week, so
Wow, it's kind of gamified in there too. Yeah, the Snake Brothers just joined us in there. They're participating. It's good to see. But I've struggled with this because I saw this video from YouTube. It was kind of labeled wrong, like it was labeled deceivingly about chemtrails, and it was a pilot.
I thought we were talking about the chats.
The what?
The chats.
Yeah, we're done. We're done that.
No, now you've spun this in there.
Graham is an all-in believer in chemtrails.
I'm not, so here's the thing, right? This geoengineering is what's going on.
Okay.
Now, some of it might be chemical trails, but it's hard to know because this pilot says, he debunks the chemtrail thing, but then he goes on to talk to his buddy right next to him who does weather modification, like cloud seeding and stuff like that. So they're spraying shit out for sure. They're modifying weather for decades now. Lots of it. The part about the and we've had Jim Leon, he talks about adding all those chemicals into the jet fuel.
We should have Jim Leon again.
We do, yeah. He debated somebody on chemtrails, on geoengineering the other day. I got to watch it. But we should have him on again for sure. But the thing that he's bringing up in this email, which makes it important to me, and which is that when we were in Colorado for Contact at the Cabin, there was some days of beautiful blue sky, like gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no planes, like there was planes flying around with contrails, just dissipating, One day, after a few of those clear days, which the temperature seemed the same, and I'm not saying there might be variations in wind and cold and hot up there in the atmosphere. It started to stick, persistent contrails, cloudy for the next few days.
Snowy.
Fucking miserable. Well, then it got really bad. It started to snow and shit too. But there's patterns to this. And that's what I think people don't understand. The skeptics, the people that just think you're crazy or whatever. Like, why is it that all of a sudden you start seeing them spraying and then it affects the weather? But then the next day it doesn't happen, or maybe it does, or it comes in patterns like this. Like this guy's saying that it goes for a few days and it stops, it clears up. Then before like a half a day's up, they start spraying again, and then it gets all cloudy again. So I pulled up a couple of the emails I was saving and stuff because I keep some of this handy.
You're going to string it.
And there's
chemtrail emails right now.
No, it's not emails from listeners. It's just I kind of keep a So actually Joseph Farrell, he does a podcast. I think News from the Nefarium, and he had a great one recently. I'm going to try and make a note here to link to it in the episode in the show notes. And he talks about climate change.
Glasses are off. Heads up.
And men being women and men, people being responsible, but not in the way we think, because we've been geoengineering for decades. So since the 40s, when they've been cloud seeding. So Joseph's on board now with all this geoengineering we've been doing that's been affecting the weather. If you look at the weather change, it happens when we started geoengineering. It's pretty interesting, the correlation there. So good to see some guys like Joseph on this.
Joseph.
Because it's happening all over the place. We talk about Russia, millions of fucking acres in Russia, 50 programs going on in the States, all over Europe. There's companies, Weather Modification Inc. So there's a guy here who says weather weapons, and then this is the other part, are real. They have a treaty to regulate them. This is an article I'll put in the show notes as well. And it says, this is Harold Save. He says, there's a sizable portion of our society who cannot grasp the reality of weather-altering devices and technologies, which have made us all unsure about which weather is real and which one is not. And this is what Joseph Farrell's talking about. All the weather anomalies that are going on in the world, what is that? They're blaming it on climate. They're blaming us. And this is Joseph's big part in this, right? They're blaming us, the peeps.
The peeps.
When really,
we the peeps.
It's humans fucking around with the weather. So you don't know what weather is real and what's not. And he brings up all these examples of extreme weather everywhere, and
it's all fake.
So this poses a big problem for those who understand how these weather devices are being used, but want to inform the public about the impending danger of the draconian laws that have been legislated based on false pretext of global warming. And he goes into this. This is back talking about the HARP stuff and how the HARP got shut down. And I mean, this is sort of review for a lot of people here, but weather warfare is the use of weather modification techniques such as cloud seeding for military purposes. And it talks about prior to the Geneva Convention that we used weather warfare in Vietnam. We've talked about that here a lot. Operation Popeye, using cloud seeding over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And that was a success. And the only reason it got brought to light is because that one journalist that saw the paper. They also dropped salt on the airbase during the siege of Ken Sa in an attempt to reduce the fog. And then there's a research paper for the United Air Force written in 1996 about the future of nanotechnology to produce artificial weather, clouds of microscopic computer particles, all communicating with each other to form an intelligent fog that could be used for various purposes. I mean, this is why people have that 3D battlefield conspiracy theory. Artificial weather technologies. What does that mean? The above phrase, artificial weather technologies do not currently exist, is in disagreement to the statement made by the U.S. Air Force during a budget hearing for HARP. And they talk about HARP getting taken over or trying to get it to taken over because it's the most versatile weather weapon staring right at us right in plain sight. And there's a patent here. So it says, for more in-depth study, you can refer to this U.S. patent 4686605 and its method and apparatus for altering a region in the Earth's atmosphere, ionosphere, and or magnetosphere. So they're saying that that's has to do with HARP, and they're trying to get this thing running for different purposes. But they're making comparisons to this being a versatile weather weapon that can... I don't want to get into the details of that, I don't think, right now. Oh, and then the other article that I forgot to bring up was talking about electrifying water crystals in this cloud seeding. So now they're trying, what's the word I'm looking for? Not electrifying.
So they could make fake lightning?
Oh, maybe. That's interesting. I wonder if that's... So they're talking about, what's the word I'm looking for? Not electrified, but electrical... There's something else.
Coal.
Yeah. Anyways, they're talking about doing the water droplets now for the cloud seeding like that.
Electric water outlets.
No.
Electrified water droplets.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
sounds
electrified
scary.
water droplets, yeah.
Bzz, bzz. Just give you little shocks when they hit you. Bzz, bzz, bzz. Ow. Ow. You're the fly getting buzzed by
And
the
then the
buzzer.
scary part, I mean, this is really the scary part. You know, we've all heard Harvard, and this guy mentions it as well in his email to us. Thanks, Dan. Professor David Keith admits that many thousands will die from Harvard's solar geoengineering program. And I mean, this is sure, I'm going to play a clip here. Here, give me the clip.
Ugh. This is probably going to be a train wreck.
Let's see if this works. Oh, there we go. Okay, ready? So this is as if geoengineering hasn't been going on for decades. This is why air pollution is now the biggest cause of death worldwide, and where that comes from. But this is sort of scary here. Let me play this clip for you.
Tons a year, but let's say you might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of that decision. I made a decision, or there was a collective decision, to do a geoengineering program, and you put, say, the kind of program I think makes more sense to put about 1 million tons a year in, but let's say.
The program I think makes more sense is to put 1 million tons a year in this guy.
You might end up killing many tens of thousands of people a year as a direct result of that decision.
In 2018,
Dun-dun.
scientists will take bold steps to explore a technology that could reverse the effects of climate change.
It's an engineering project that would literally touch every living thing on the planet.
Like, you see the look in his eyes. He's
Reflect
fucking
sunlight back
crazy.
into space and cool
Cray,
down
cray.
the Earth. Geoengineering is the pioneering science that could well be on everyone's lips in 2018.
The idea of geoengineering is the idea that humans purposefully influence the climate of the planet.
Like, they haven't been doing
Solar
that for
geoengineering
fucking decades. There's
specifically
documents
is
all over
idea
the
of
place.
Introducing a substance into the stratosphere that will cool down the planet by reflecting back sunlight.
Cool
We
down
turn
the planet.
sun a little bit, and that brings the Earth's energy more into balance, and that could reduce some of the risks like extreme storms or extreme temperature. Exactly.
Okay, so what do we do?
So the other thing is horrifying. It is that you could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up in a kind of ugly tech fix.
You could spray
This is on
into the
Colbert.
atmosphere to
Yes.
change. Okay,
Spray
okay.
pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
I made
What a great
It
idea.
was a collective decision
Like, what?
to do a geoengineering program, and you put, say, the kind of program I think makes more sense to put.
Okay, we don't need to hear that part again. I mean, is this crazy talk or what? Why are we messing with the weather that much?
Because we're fucking stupid.
You know, and messing with the atmosphere.
Yes.
Because we might actually be, if they paid attention to the sun, like some people say, we might be going into a little ice age here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a mile of ice here 11,000 years ago. It's warming.
Not 11,000.
There's 300 or 400 feet less water, right?
Yeah, it was more like 14,000.
No, it was 12,000, 13,000. You know what I mean? It's crazy. I don't know. It bugs me, man. It bugs me a
it
lot.
seems like it.
That we're messing with the weather systems. I mean, it's bad enough little cloud seeding operations and stuff like that are going on all over the world.
You should run for politics on that platform.
Stop the geoengineering.
Yeah.
We're going to kill tens of thousands of people.
Don't go to the chats.
It's unbelievable. It drives me nuts.
Sounds like it.
I got leftover stuff for my old weather modification segment. We should bring up again. I got all the patents still there and stuff. We should go over that.
And
Again. But
burned
you
a
always
lot
get
of
seem
it.
to get a little tired of it.
Yeah. What next, Grimerica?
I got a quote.
Oh, for
You want the
fuck's
quote?
sake.
You gonna do that quote jingle?
This is what I fucking put up with.
This is for you, buddy. This is a quote for you. I got one lined up just for you.
No, it's not working because you got the fucking cord. Oh, it's too late. What time is it?
Yeah, it's a late one. Saturday night, 12 o'clock, something like that.
The profound quote of the week.
Darren, can you guess it? It's the profound quote of the week. Can you guess the human who spoke it or wrote it down? Profound quote of the week.
All right, thanks. Nice jingle. The American Medical Association is not prepared to state that no harm will be done to any person by water fluoridation. The AMA has not carried out any research work, either long-term or short-term, regarding the possibility of any side effects.
Robert F. Kennedy.
No. Dr. Joseph Flanagan, Assistant Director of Environmental
Should have known it was Flanagan.
Environmental Health, American Medical Association. But here's the special one for you.
For me?
Yeah.
Just for me?
Yeah. And Ben.
And Ben?
I am pro-vaccine. I had all 6 of my children vaccinated. I believe that vaccines save millions of lives. So let me explain why I edited the book Thimerosal. Let the science speak, which exposes the dangerous and wholly unnecessary use of the mercury-based preservative thimerosal in vaccines being given to millions of children and pregnant women here and around the world. Vaccines are big business. Pharma is a $1 trillion industry, with vaccines accounting for $25 billion in annual sales. CDC's decision to add a vaccine to the schedule can guarantee its manufacturer millions of customers and billions in revenue with minimal advertising or marketing costs and complete immunity from lawsuits. High stakes in the seamless marriage between big pharma and government agencies have spawned an opaque and crooked regulatory system. Merck, one of America's leading vaccine outfits, is currently under investigation for deceiving FDA regulators about the effectiveness of its MMR vaccine. 2 whistleblowers say Merck ginned up sham studies to maintain Merck's MMR monopoly. Big money has fueled the exponential expansion of CDC's vaccine schedule since 1988, when Congress's grant the immunity from lawsuits suddenly transformed vaccines into pay dirt. CDC recommended 5 pediatric vaccines when I was a boy in 1954. Today's children cannot go to school without at least 56 doses of 14 vaccines by the time they're 18. An insatiable pharmaceutical industry has 271 new vaccines under development in CDC's bureaucratic pipeline in hopes of boosting vaccine revenues to $100 billion by 2025. The industry's principal spokesperson, Dr. Paul Offit, says he believes children can take as many as 10,000 vaccines.
Robert F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. What next?
That puts kind of things into perspective too, you know.
Fuck yeah.
It's funny we don't trust big pharma with other things, but oh yeah, hundreds of vaccines are fine.
Support the show. Grimerica.ca/support. We just recorded a couple new black budget shows earlier tonight.
Get into controversial stuff that we'll get fucking
banned for. So we'll be restarting the black budget feed after a little hiatus. We were busy with the last conference. Anyway, like I say, recorded some shows tonight. We'll record some more next week. Keep that shit going.
Yeah, we're going to try going for 2 a week for a while here.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least,
right.
I mean, well, we're pumping out more. I mean, you know, you said 2 a week on the last episode. And I'm thinking it's going to be
for the month of July, we're going to do 2 a week.
And then it'll probably go down to like 2 a week for every 2 weeks.
After that, it's going to go down to 1 a week. Because what did we say in the last episode? We said we need to get 100 new patrons. And we'll
we're
stick to
going
it.
for 100. Yeah, and then we'll stick to it.
So if we're going to go 2 a week for July, and if we get 100 new patrons, we'll keep going 2 a week. And you better not all be $1 patrons, because that would be a real kick in the junk. We don't want to do more work for an extra $100 a month. We're hoping we can get enough here to pay the rent and everything else.
We pay the rent now, but
yeah,
we could barely.
We could use to pay the rent and a little more. Start saving some money. We'd like to start saving some money, so we're prepared for some things. We've got some plans, some things we'd like to do.
Yeah,
it costs money. Everything else costs money. It all costs money. I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for the people that are providing the value that we get now that help us pay the bills, there wouldn't be a show at this point. Definitely wouldn't be ramping up to 2 shows a week. I mean, that means the hosting bill is going to double over at Libsyn. So, yeah, and basically we're going to try There's been a bit of a slowdown in support the last couple of months. So instead of bitching and complaining, we're just going to try and throw more content at you. So we're going to just up our game and up our value, and we're going to see if twice as much value, twice as many interviews, twice as much free shows, twice as much content.
Maybe it might not be twice as much. Might be like
for a month,
70%. You know,
and that's less.
No, 70% more.
Oh,
an extra 70%.
And we'll see what that's if the value is received with more value.
Here's the problem with twice as much, because if one interview falls through, which seems to happen every month or two, then we're fucked.
Oh yeah, that's right. Better not cashew eat my cashews. So Grimerica.ca/support. We're gonna started now. This is one of them. The 2 weeks starts with this episode coming out on Tuesday or some shit. Grimerica.ca/support. Let us know you liked it. Hit the Patreon button. Of course, you always hit the Stripe and the PayPal too, just for fun. Sign up for a monthly. Show us that you appreciate the extra episodes, or everybody will just roll it back next month to one a week. It's easier. What else we got? Then you get the Black Budget Show too. You sign up, get the Black Budget Show. Super duper. We could use it. We could use support. We love yous because we need it. We need it. Support helps us pay the bills. Helps us stay on track. Helps the internet keep going. If the internet bill don't get paid, that's it. Game over.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of monthly bills, and stuff keeps going.
Yeah,
broken cords.
I tried to stop running mine over with my, the ones that are hooked up to the headphones are amazingly versatile.
Yeah,
compared to the rest of them. Of course, the other thing is we did officially announce the next contact at the cabin last week. We got early bird registration going until July 8th. And then we'll have the website going and all that. If you're interested in getting on the early bird list, I mean, I've already got interest from 17 or 18 people, and there's only 35 spots. This is a single trimester event, April 16th to 18th, 2020, with Dave Matheson, Brandon Powell, down in sunny Utah. We're going to do some stargazing in Bryson Zion Canyons. We've got, we're looking at the places in Duck Creek, which is halfway between, it's about an hour from Bryce and an hour from Zion. So we're going to go, us and the Snake Bros and Brandon, we're all going to meet up in Vegas. We're going to rent some vans. We're going to pick all you guys up there. Anyone who wants a free ride can meet us in Vegas. Comes with
not in Vegas, at the airport.
At the airport in Vegas, at the airport, which we directly leave from. Probably hit, grab some supplies in Nevada. And then we'll hit the road straight to our venue in Duck Creek.
Yeah, we want to get this one sorted so that we can start making plans for other ones as well. Like the faster we get this one kind of, at least dialed in with the deposit down and the house rented and all that, then we can
move on to the next one.
Those are some great ideas.
We got some great ideas. We're looking at doing a few of these things next year. And I know you guys are off in math, and like I say, it's a single trimester event, so it's going to fill up a lot quicker than the other ones. This time, like we say, we're going to offer all your meals and transport to and from Vegas, so it can be and your park entry, so it can be, technically you probably show up with not too much money in your pocket and be okay. So if you're interested in that, the website will be up soon, contact@thecabin.com. But for now, you just got to shoot me an email, darren@grimerica.com. If you're interested, get you on the list. Like I say, that's about halfway full already with just the waiting list. Those people haven't actually made a deposit yet, but I get the sense this thing could be filled up by the end of July or by the end of August for sure. So I wouldn't fuck around. What else?
That's about it, buddy.
That's it.
Yeah. Thanks. Hopefully Ben enjoys this one.
No, I was going to do I broke the screen on the studio phone. So if you've texted or left a voicemail,
really?
Yeah. Too bad to even anyway, I got to take it and get it fixed.
Well, I got an extra phone. If you want to buy it off, if the show wants to buy it off me, I got an old 6.
Is it unlocked? Can we just slide the SIM card in it?
That SIM card.
I think I get that one fixed for $90.
No, just buy it. Pay me 90, and I'll give it to you, maybe, or to 150. Let's say.
Oh, I see. Grimerica.ca/support. But yeah, so if you text or left a voicemail and we haven't acknowledged it, that's because the phone's broken. I broke the phone. I'm sorry.
Actually, I got it with. I'll show it to you. I got it with me.
Well, you could try sliding in the SIM card, see what happens.
Okay.
Maybe not tonight. It's midnight. That's it. Enjoy the interview with Ben Greenfield. We waited a while for it.
Yeah,
it's
thanks
a great
for coming
one.
on, Ben.
And then enjoy the 2 shows a week for a little while here. Oh man, there's so much great stuff here. Check out the show notes. All the stuff we just rambled off will be in the show notes. You can go through that shit one by one. Check it off. Enjoy the chat. Ben Greenfield.
All right, so today in the afternoon, Saturday afternoon, we have Ben Greenfield here. Super excited about this chat. He's the founder and CEO of Kion and also the host of the Ben Greenfield podcast. He's truly an amazing athlete, and he's on the leading edge of self-quantification, biohacking, health and wellness, and fitness. He's also a certified coach for Spartan SGX, and he's got a master's in physiology and biomechanics. And yeah, we're super happy to have you here, Ben. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks. But my office isn't as cool as your guys'.
Oh, I think it's way cooler,
dude.
dude.
Shit littered around there.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
right
it.
Now, it's like,
I forgot in the intro. He's also he makes his own spam, so he's got a special place in our heart.
Well, it's a synchro that he just made the spam too.
The can of spam on your table, along with your freaking sacred geometry poster or whatever that is, and the mold and the little Native American blanket and all sorts of stuff. It looks like a fun place.
We'll have to get you in studio sometime. We're only about 5 hours from Bonner, so.
Oh, yeah. I get really bored and want to go on a pretty long car ride. I'll jet across the border.
So you're joining us from your fitness studio, which is like you're walking on a treadmill right now, and this is how you do it, eh?
Actually, this is not my fitness studio. I just slapped a treadmill in front of my standing desk so I could walk while I make phone calls and do stuff like that. So yeah, I honestly, like any given day, I can usually walk like 3 to 5 miles while I'm just kind of dicking around at work. So kind of nice to be able to move during the day. But I have an actual gym out in the backyard with a bunch of stuff out there. I was out there this morning. My legs are sore because I was doing this weird workout. It's like electrical muscle stimulation, where you slap all these electrodes all over your legs, and you jack this. It was designed in Russia. It's called Russian E-stim, and it uses like this DC current to just pull all the muscles your brain wouldn't normally be able to recruit to action. And it is super duper hard, and you could barely walk afterwards. So I did that this morning, and then I can also barely walk right now because I was telling you guys I made my kids carrot cake acai bowls for breakfast. And they're really good. It was like eating pumpkin pie for breakfast. And I put like macadamia nuts and dark chocolate and coconut flakes and all sorts of stuff on top of it. And made these wonderful acai bowls for them, but they only eat about half of them. So I also had a great big acai bowl, and then all my kids leftover acai bowls. So my legs are all jacked from the electrical muscle stimulation, and my stomach is like overflowing with carrots right now. So I feel pretty good.
Nice. We used to have a standing desk in the studio when we were in our old studio there.
When Graham was on his health kick, we had the standing desk and everything, but they got back on the wheat and we are sitting down again.
There you go with spam.
with spam. There's probably wheat in this spam, I bet.
They usually figure out how to put wheat in something.
Yeah, exactly.
If not, you could buy some gluten powder and sprinkle it on there later.
I think I heard you talking about with one of your guests that it's like every 25 minutes you kind of switch things up a little bit. So it's like the important thing is not that sitting is so bad, but it's just that you're not doing anything for that long of a period of time.
Yeah, and they actually looked into this. They found that even people who exercise, like do their 1 hour of CrossFit or the health club or whatever at the beginning or the end of the day, they actually didn't see a significant reduction in most of the causes of mortality and cardiovascular risk if they were still sitting for 8 hours a day.
Right.
And so the idea is not that sitting is bad, but sitting for long periods of time can be detrimental to your blood glucose, specifically because standing upregulates your ability to be able to stabilize your blood glucose, and walking does it even more. But also because it shortens your hip flexors when you're sitting. And so when you shorten your hip flexors, what that does is it deactivates your glutes. And so when you shorten your hip flexors and deactivate your glutes, that's a fast track to low back and hip issues. So the trick is not to avoid sitting, but to have all sorts of different postures you can adopt during the day: sitting, kneeling, sitting cross-legged, in a lunging position, having like a different type of chair you could sit on. Like I've got one called a saddle chair. It kind of like splits your pelvis a little bit when you're sitting and forces you into a better posture. Maybe a treadmill if you have room, you're able to slap one in there. And then like one of these desks that could preferably go from like sitting to standing. So you can just kind of boogie all day long in different positions. And there's there's a biomechanist out of Seattle named Dr. Katie Bowman, who even has some research she's published in one of her last books. I forget the name of the book, but it kind of shows the turbulence in different areas of blood vessels as they move through your body. And she even makes an argument in that book that sitting all day and then exercising could probably be worse for you than not exercising at all, because the blood, as it passes those areas of almost like kinked blood vessels that kind of they lose their elasticity as you're sitting all day long, could put you at higher risk for a heart attack if you're sitting all day and then going and just like crushing it at the gym. So yeah, the trick is not to not sit, but just to not sit for really long periods of time without breaks. And generally, I'll sit anytime I want to be in a little bit more of a parasympathetic state, like a rest and digest state, right? So I'll sit to eat, and I'll sit to chat with people. And, like if I'm at a party, I'll lounge on the couch and sit with people. But, anytime I'm working, I'm generally not sitting, with the only exception of that being I like to write fiction, like at the end of the day. And I have like my special chair, like my set and setting in the living room, where I'll go and bang out some fiction, just kind of sitting hunched over my computer.
Right on. Yeah, you used to write as a kid, didn't you? A little bit. Like I was reading your bio beforehand as well, and I didn't know all of this even after listening to you for a few years. But it seemed like your life kind of switched around after in your early 20s, getting into becoming more of an athlete and studying all that stuff, as opposed to like the way you kind of grew up as a teenager.
Yeah, well, actually, it was more like when I was in my elementary years, up until I was about 13. I was very much into fiction. My goal was to be a computer programmer and design video games. Like I was into fantasy fiction video games, online World of Warcraft, and writing fiction and reading fiction. And then I got kind of carried away with sports, particularly tennis. And that's what kind of got me into physical culture and fitness and nutrition and physiology and all the stuff I wound up studying at university. But up until that point, I was pretty hardcore into like I read so much as a kid. I would just like, my parents would have to force me out of my room and into the sunshine, because I would just sit and read all day long. And I've kind of tapped back into that in my 30s. I like to read fiction, and I wrote a fiction novel, a fantasy fiction novel last year. I'm about halfway through the sequel to that. And my goal is to have a 5-part fiction book series done by the time I'm 50 years old. So nice. That's what I'm hanging away at.
I hope you get there. I want to roll it back a bit. You made the comment about the sitting and the lower back and the shortened hip flexors. That's like, I struggle with that problem. I spend a lot of time in a vehicle during the day and some time at a desk, but I do get a lot of walking in there. But I definitely noticed that, especially like we just went to Colorado and back, and that was about, I think it was about 3,500 miles return trip and sightseeing and everything else. And I'm just wondering, what are some of the ways you can, if you already have that problem with the lower back and the hip pain, and that probably is the result of that, what's some of the ways to roll that back?
Yeah, I kind of chunk it into two categories. One, mobility, and two, movement. So mobility means like if the hip flexors are shortened, and typically two other muscles that act technically they're hip flexors, but they kind of go all the way up into your abs, your psoas and your iliacus muscles. Those tend to be really shortened as well. Typically, the trick, first of all, from a mobility standpoint, is you get into all those muscles on the front of your hips, like starting up around where your quads attach into your hips and kind of moving all the way up into some of those parts around either side of your belly button. And you get in there with like a foam roller or a lacrosse ball, or there's a newer device that just came out last year. It's like this cheap ass looking piece of plastic. I think they sell it for like $40. They probably get it manufactured for like $2 in Taiwan or something, but it works. It's called a PSO right, PSO right, like psoas right, and you kind of lay your body over that, and it digs like perfectly into some of those areas that tend to get super short when you're in that seated position. And a lot of people, they think my low back hurts, so I should like foam roll my low back or get a massage on my low back. But 9 times out of 10, the area you should be working is all the front, like from the sides of the belly button all the way on down to like the front of the quads. Like that's the area that tends to be shortened and adhesed. So you do that. And then also from a mobility standpoint, like if you Googled like yoga hip flexor series or yoga hip opener series, like typically any of those kind of moves they do in yoga to free up the hips, like some of those lunges where you have your arms up in an overhead position while you're lunging, or some of the laying on the ground hip openers, those work really well if you're kind of mobilizing your psoas and your iliacus at the same time with deep tissue work. And then from a movement standpoint, you turn the glutes back on. And there's a lot of different moves you can do for your glutes, like squats and lunges and stuff like that. But two of my favorites are, number one, you just get down in like a crawl position on the ground, like a quadruped position, like you're going to go bear crawl or something. And from that position, you just like kick your right leg out behind you as many times as you can, like 30 times. Then you reverse and you kick your left leg out behind you. Then you kick your right leg kind of out to the side and your left leg out to the side. So essentially you're in like a bear crawl position, just like moving your legs. And you'll know you're doing it right because your glutes start to burn like hell. And that kind of trains your body how to turn glutes back on. The other one that I really like from a movement standpoint is there's this doctor that used to work with a bunch of the Tour de France cyclists who would have low back pain. He works with Lance Armstrong. He works with a bunch of pro athletes and surfers and stuff now, specifically on low back pain. And he like specializes in turning the glutes back on. His name is Dr. Eric Goodman. And he has a book called True to Form. And that book, True to Form, it's got like 10 exercises in it that are super simple to learn and to memorize. And a lot of times what I'll have people do, like clients that I'm coaching, I do this with myself as well, is I'll just kind of weave those 10 exercises in throughout the week. If I'm like taking a little break from work, or if I'm waiting for an airplane to take off and I'm at the gate or whatever, I don't really have any rhyme or reason. But those moves do a really good job turning on the glutes. So basically that's what it comes down to, is you mobilize kind of the whole front area, and you do like some yoga hip openers and yoga hip moves. And then you also do something like those kickouts from a bear crawl position. And then also you grab a book like that True to Form book and learn some of those moves.
Awesome.
That makes a lot of sense, because you know what I've noticed lately is, you know how you get your shoulders get hunched in from life. And then when Lisa and I massage each other, we started doing some massaging on the inside here as well. And you get, it's, you know, it really makes a difference in bouncing those shoulders back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. Like with the upper back and the shoulder posture, like a lot of people don't realize how tight their pec majors are. And I mean, if you ever had a massage therapist kind of work in that area under the clavicle and kind of around the inside crease of the shoulder where the shoulder kind of attaches to your chest, like all that stuff tends to be super ropey and knotty and jumpy. And if you can get in there, I mean, you could do it yourself, but but the other one that I like to do for that area is if you have a foam roller, you kind of put it underneath your back, like up around your upper back, and then just kind of lean back and you let your arms go like this. For anybody watching the video, I'm just kind of let my arms kind of reach back behind me, and you press them into the floor as hard as you can like this, and just kind of opens up that whole area. But if you have the foam back like a fulcrum, it allows you to really open up that area. And if you do that after you've gotten your pecs massaged, or after you've kind of massaged your own pecs with a foam roller or lacrosse ball or whatever, that can just like mobilize that whole area too.
Mine won't even reach the ground when I do it. I can't even get my elbows to the ground. Terrible.
See, that should be your goal, should be to get the elbows to the ground. And if you can't, you can even stand against a wall and do that. Like you have your back touching the wall and your heels touching the wall. And then you put your arms back behind you like that. And you just try to get the backs of your hands touch the wall.
Yeah.
And then you just push against the wall as hard as you can for like 10 seconds. And it kind of opens up the shoulders.
I'll have to try that.
So we were talking about wheat a little bit, how they managed to sneak a little bit of wheat and everything. We've got some.
Do you say weed or wheat?
Wheat. Well, those are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. Am I?
These days with CBD, they're putting that into everything too.
Yeah.
What's your take? Well, what's your take on that?
CBD?
Yeah.
I like it. I mean, not just CBD, but like CBN and CBG and all these other cannabinoids that they're isolating from the hemp plant. They all have specific properties like anti-inflammatory or anti-anxiety or anti-stress. Like, I think it's a huge joke that there's like grandmas getting arrested in airports for having CBD tinctures or CBD lotions that they're using on themselves when it's a completely harmless molecule, in the same airports where they're selling people booze, which is killing and harming a lot more people than something like CBD. As a matter of fact, CBD is, I think, zero incidences ever of any type of toxicity or death related to it. But it's a molecule that really interacts, the endocannabinoid system with our endocrine system, with a lot of different anti-inflammatory pathways, with a lot of different neurotransmitter pathways related to relieving anxiety and stress. I take CBD every day. Like before I go to bed at night, I take 60 to 100 milligrams of CBD and I sleep like a baby. And I measure my deep sleep cycles and they're through the roof. And I don't do a lot of THC. I'll occasionally throw that into the mix. Like because I don't really like to drink alcohol much, right? So if I'm going to a party or something like that, like I'll just eat an edible or take a couple hits on a vape pen rather than drinking to excess. But THC is something I'll use in a situation like that. But CBD, man, I think it's a wonderful molecule. I think it's helping a lot of people out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What about the other one, the wheat? Because we've noticed in our family recently that, Lisa can't touch it, and it definitely looks like Cassandra's got some issues. So we actually met a guy in Colorado who deals with it in his family, and he's recommended some genetic tests you can get done for fairly cheap to see if you have a couple. I'd have to look at the info to say exactly, but it's a couple of markers that you have, and they basically say you should be staying away from it. I'm just wondering. I'm assuming, if I remember correctly, I don't think you go too near wheat very often.
Well, it depends on the person. Like you're right that you can just go and get like a 23andMe test, for example, like a simple salivary analysis, and see if you carry specific SNPs that tend to be associated with celiac predisposition or an actual true medical inflammatory response to some of the gluten proteins that are specifically in wheat. You can also get a really good food allergy panel that tests whether or not you have a true antibody response to wheat. There's a very good one. It's unfortunately not one of those type of tests you can order to your house like a genetic test, but it's one that a doctor would have to order for you. but I find a great deal of value in this test. It's a company called Cyrex, Cyrex, and they do a very comprehensive panel that shows whether or not you have any type of true sensitivities to gluten. And they also test what's called cross-reactivity, meaning they'll test whether or not certain foods that you might consume along with wheat would render you more susceptible to the damage that could do to the gut, like coffee or corn or something like that. So they have a whole bunch of different, they call them arrays, like panels that they run. There's like 22 different panels, some for mold, some for other allergies aside from wheat. But the one that I really like is they have one that's number 10, and the Cyrex panel 10, I think, is like the gold standard to see whether or not your body could truly be able to handle gluten, or whether it might be something that's smart for you to avoid. But I think in most cases, wheat and gluten is kind of unfairly vilified. It's something that, humans have been eating for thousands of years. Our guts have adapted pretty well to being able to digest, a lot of the things that people call the natural built-in plant defense mechanisms that you'd find in wheat, like the gluten or the phytic acids or things like that. I think the problem is a lot of people have compromised guts, right? And I think one of the biggest issues, and I think this is also why people who travel to Europe can handle more pasta and more bread and things like that when they're there than they can in America, is because of glyphosate. Because glyphosate can, it essentially, activates a protein in the gut called zonulin, and can render the gut a little bit more permeable to things like gluten crossing the blood-gut barrier and causing an actual antibody response, right? An actual immune response to the consumption of gluten. And so I think consuming wheat from a crop that's been sprayed with glyphosate or any number of other different herbicides or pesticides is a bigger issue. And if you have access to like organic, non-GMO wheat, it's probably not going to be as big of an issue. And furthermore, we have evidence, that not just like quinoa, for example, like rinsing and soaking and even sprouting quinoa, or fermenting and soaking lentils prior to cooking, doing a lot of things to deactivate the natural built-in defense mechanisms of a plant are something that our ancestors would have done. It's a natural way to actually prepare a plant, just like whatever, walk out into a field of wheat and just like start to eat the stalks or you're going to get a tummy ache. I mean, even animals know that. But, in addition to that, the other thing is that, a lot of people just don't prepare wheat in this ancestral way. And so what I mean by that is like, I'll eat bread, but I'll eat, like, if I'm going to have bread, I'll have sourdough bread, right? Because if sourdough bread has been fermented, that actually deactivates a lot of the phytic acids. It pre-digests a lot of the gluten. It even lowers the glycemic index of bread, so it's friendlier to your blood glucose levels. So for me, it all depends. If it's like a non-GMO, organic crop, hasn't been sprayed with herbicides or pesticides or glyphosate, preferably has been fermented, and I think wheat is not that much of an issue, especially in people who don't have compromised guts and they're not eating a crappy diet, and they actually have the ability to be able to digest it.
So that's kind of like, I was actually talking to a fellow there a couple weeks ago, who I don't want to guess his name. John? Anyway, Jeff? I think it was a J. Anyway, he was talking about one of the ways, because white rice it turns into a sugar right away, if I understand that process correctly. But he was talking about how you can cook the rice, throw it in the fridge for a day or two, and it actually reverses that and turns it into a prebiotic.
Yeah, it basically makes the starch more resistant. Another example, like a resistant starch, would be like a green banana versus a ripe banana. Green bananas tend to simply be fed upon by the bacteria in your stomach, and the sugar is less digestible and absorbable by the human body, hence its name, resistant starch. Another example would be like acacia fiber or inulin, or many of these ingredients you'll now see in a lot of popular probiotics, because we know these are prebiotics. They'll feed the bacteria rather than feeding you. And when the bacteria are fed, they wind up producing another term is called postbiotics. which are beneficial compounds that are released when a bacteria consumes a prebiotic. Like a perfect example of that would be like another resistant starch kind of prebiotic is the skin of a pomegranate, right? And so a few of my favorite probiotics now, they're using pomegranate seed extract and pomegranate skin, blending that in with the probiotics. You got a prebiotic and a probiotic. The postbiotic that's produced by a bacteria when that happens is called urolithin A. And urolithin A is actually one of the few compounds that is released by probiotics that can actually increase lifespan. It decreases the rate at which your telomeres shorten and has like this longevity enhancing effect. So it's kind of cool if you think about it. If you eat a diet that has some resistant starches in it, like green bananas or pomegranates or like some of that rice that you prepare, but then refrigerate and then eat after it's been cooled overnight, and you're including fermented foods or probiotics in your diet as well, not only is it fantastic for your gut, but it might even have kind of a life extending effect.
That's interesting. So I went about 4 months. Actually, are you there, Ben? I think you're a little frozen there. I've lost the connection.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I went about 4.5 months off of most sugar, like most processed sugar and wheat. And then since our trip and we got back and I started eating a little bit and then I played hockey and I was so fucking sore after the hockey game. And I wondered if that's because I started eating wheat and sugar again.
Well, especially wheat that's like 4 hours from grain to bag, I think that's a huge problem is the industrialization of it all.
Yeah, a lot of people do have like an inflammatory cytokine response to wheat. And that's why many people who have both rheumatoid arthritis and even some elements of osteoarthritis, they respond really well to kind of like more of a paleo protocol where you eliminate a lot of modern grains that can cause that. I also feel that, again, not to kick this horse to death, that a lot of those people could just benefit from making sure that their gut is taken care of, avoiding glyphosate sprayed crops, and if they were to eat, making sure it's prepared properly, like a slow fermented bread or something like that.
So friends of ours that are farmers, they use some pesticides, but they can't understand why people want to spray glyphosate pre-harvest. Like in Canada, they want to spray it all to dry it out right before harvest, but they don't seem to think glyphosate is the same issue if it's used properly prior, like as a pesticide.
Allen Brothers?
Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
No, I have no clue. They could be right.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably know a lot more about farming than I do, but all I know is that, if it is actually on the surface of the food that you're consuming, then it could be an issue.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it's the same thing with some of the GMO crops. Like, they know that some of the genetic modification has been able to cause a great deal of damage to the guts of like rodents and insects and things like that. And there's not a lot of good studies in humans, but my protocol, I just play it safe.
Yeah, totally.
If I can get my hands on something that hasn't been sprayed, I'd rather do that.
Yeah, 100%.
We got a question from the chats here. What is Ben's opinion on fitness trackers such as Fitbit, Apple Watch, and such? Are they worth the effort in using?
Yeah, they can be highly motivating. Like I wear an Oura ring to track. Well, it tracks like my steps, tracks my sleep, it tracks my heart rate variability, which is kind of like your nervous system health. And I find it motivating. Like I have found that I do a much better job like limiting my artificial light exposure at night, wearing blue light blocking glasses in the evening, and doing like some normal sleep hygiene stuff. Since I've done that, and it sounds stupid, but mostly just because I want to like have a good sleep score, like wake up and see my sleep score. And you'd think prior to having a ring like that or a tracker like that, I just want to do that just so I had better energy the next day. But I've found I'm even more motivated to do that because I'm kind of competitive with myself and I like to keep my sleep score up. Or another example of that would be, like my blood glucose monitor. One of the main things I found with that is like, if I eat on an airplane, because you're sitting on an airplane, back to the topic of sitting and, your blood glucose being less controllable when you're in a position. But when you're on an airplane, you're kind of screwed. You don't really have the option to stand. And I actually usually choose a window seat because I kind of like to sleep on airplanes. I can sleep better when I'm leaning my head against that wall that's by the window. So I'm trapped in there anyways. I can't get up and go to a bunch of fancy clown moves at the back of the plane that frequently. But I noted when I started wearing a blood glucose monitor, like one of the best ways to spike my blood glucose and keep it up for a long time was if I ate on a plane in a seated position. Even healthy food, right? Like my healthy energy bar or a handful of nuts and dark chocolate or whatever. So by wearing that blood glucose monitor on planes, I'm just far more likely to like order a soda water and have a soda water and chew some gum on the plane, right? Or another example would be I've found that like my sweet spot for activity with my tracker is about 15,000 steps a day. And if I get to the end of the day and I've got like whatever 14,000 steps, I'll go like walk to the mailbox and back after dinner. Like it's just highly motivating to have these trackers. And I think that the pros definitely outweigh the cons. I would say the only thing, and this is getting into the weeds a little bit, and some people consider this to be a little bit nitpicky, is I'm also pretty careful like how much I expose my body to Wi-Fi and to Bluetooth signals. I have my reservations about whether or not long-term exposure to high amounts of so-called dirty EMF is good for the body. And so because I'm careful with that, I try to choose devices for self-quantification that either only emit a Bluetooth signal, not a Wi-Fi signal, and that preferably during a night of sleep, for example, could be placed into the equivalent of airplane mode, right? Disable the Bluetooth signal, disable the Wi-Fi signal. And a lot of these devices don't have that option, right? And so that means that, let's say you sleep like with your head kind of tucked up like this, and you've got one of those bracelets on, and it's emitting like a class 3 Bluetooth signal every 3 seconds looking for a device to talk to. Well, you've just basically got just like a transmitter next to your brain all night long. Yeah. And I'm concerned about the long-term effects of that. So I'd say if you are going to choose a tracking device, I like the ones that can be put in airplane mode, and especially you'd want to have your phone in airplane mode anyways if it's next to your bed at night. But that's my only thing with trackers. I like them all. I encourage people to find those we could disable like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and stuff like that, especially while you're sleeping.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I started doing airplane mode for sleeping, and it's made a big difference actually on my sleep and dreaming. Like I find like I dream more now on airplane mode. So I did want to pick your brain a little bit about testosterone and what you would say to, like, let's say parents of young boys, like boys, let's say like 8 to 13 or something like that, where, their doctors are now telling them that, your son is not producing any natural testosterone. And now they feel like they have to be on hormone replacement therapy, or I don't even know if that's the right term for it, but on meds for life to create testosterone. Like, isn't there a bunch of natural things and some things that you would suggest that people do to do that?
Yeah, for any parent of a little boy, I think the best thing to do is just get testosterone and start injecting your kid's right butt cheek every day. It's like jam a needle up there and fill them full. Get them started early. No, I'm just kidding. With kids, and this is for both females and males, the bigger issue with kids is environmental estrogens, right? Like, what kind of shampoo are you using with your kids, even your babies? Are you storing the food in the refrigerator in plastic? Are you microwaving stuff in styrofoam? Are you just like spraying household cleaning chemicals all over the house that have a lot of endocrine disruptors in them and a lot of phytoestrogens in them? Because what'll happen there is you'll simply decrease the amount of androgen receptors that are available to testosterone and fill a young man's body or a young woman's body just chock full of estrogen. It's one of the reasons that we see young females going through puberty at an earlier age. It's one of the reasons why we see young men experiencing symptoms of andropause at an early age, is because of phytoestrogens. And that's primarily a chemical type of issue. And there's a really good book about this by Dr. Anthony J. called Estrogeneration that kind of gets into how we're kind of screwing our kids by not taking into account, what kind of soaps and shampoos they're using, what kind of chemicals we're using to clean our houses, what kind of things we're storing our food in, etc. So that's the big issue, and for adults, it can be other things, for example, we know there are certain micronutrient deficiencies that can affect a man's ability to be able to produce testosterone, that are low hanging fruit, that don't involve, you need to go out and buy some, trendy Amazonian superfood to boost your testosterone levels. Like examples of that would be zinc. A lot of guys are deficient in zinc. That affects testosterone. Creatine, which a lot of people think is just like a strength and power athlete supplement. Deficiency in creatine, that can also affect testosterone. Minerals, like using a lot of sea salts and using a lot of trace liquid minerals and things like that. Mineral depletion is another thing that's very, very important for testosterone. And so, as you can imagine, it's pretty easy to get your hands on like zinc, minerals, and creatine. And probably one final one I'd throw in there that would be magnesium. And, a lot of times taking care of that low hanging fruit reduces the need to buy some crazy herb or start onto like a hormone replacement therapy. And then cortisol and stress are huge because, and I do a lot of consulting with people and look over their blood and their biomarkers. And I always see like this cluster of elevated cortisol, elevated sex hormone binding globulin, and pretty good total testosterone levels, but very low free bioactive testosterone levels. Because what happens is when you're stressed out, your body elevates the levels of sex hormone binding globulin, and that binds to sex hormones, as the name implies. And when you bind to total testosterone, you render less of it free and active and bioavailable. Because frankly, your body, when cortisol is high and it's stressed out, it's like nature's response. It doesn't want a stressed out human who's like running from a lion or in a time of famine or whatever your body is interpreting that as from an evolutionary standpoint to go out and make babies, right? It doesn't want a human to bring babies into a stressed out environment. So it'll upregulate sex hormone binding globulin to decrease the free testosterone. Even if your brain is sending the signal to your testes just fine to make total testosterone, it's rendering that not bioavailable. So the trick there is, sleep well, de-stress, take care of cortisol levels, pick up something like a meditation practice or or a breath work practice or other ways to control stress, which a lot of guys, they'd rather just take out a needle and jab their right butt cheek or slash some testosterone cream on their scrotum. But I mean, I think there's a lot more low hanging fruit that you can go after. And then the last thing, and there's a lot of stuff you could do, but the last thing I would say from an exercise standpoint, like I've noticed a lot of guys will just do like, whatever, 40-minute slogs on the treadmill, or they'll do like a lot of endurance work or so-called chronic cardio. And a lot of that's not that great for testosterone levels. Your legs have a very high density of androgen receptors, and the body from a testosterone standpoint responds really well to things like heavy deadlifts, heavy squats, heavy strength training in general, but especially heavy strength training and high intensity interval training that involves the legs, like sprints on the treadmill, quick sprints on the bike, squats, deadlifts, stuff like that. So if you take care of your cortisol and your stress, you take care of some of those micronutrients, and then a few times a week, you just like lift some heavy shit, especially with your legs, and throw in some good solid sprints, you can see a pretty good bump up in testosterone levels.
What about squatting without weights? Just squatting to squat. Like that's what I do for a warm up for ball hockey. Instead of stretching now, I just do a bunch of squats and lunges and all that. Will that help?
Yeah. Any movement with the legs like that will help.
Yeah. As long as it's not chronic
preferable. Cardio. Yeah. Preferable to go to failure if you can. With the body weight stuff, it can sometimes be hard to do that. Like a lot of guys can do like 50 or 100 body weight squats, and it really doesn't feel like they're getting that level. So the trick here, this is like a little hack I like, because I throw these things in my bag when I travel. You can buy them on Amazon, but they're called blood flow restriction straps. They've got some really good research behind them for being able to build muscle and increase growth hormone, even in the absence of heavy weights. And they're literally like tourniquets that you wrap around your arms or you wrap around your legs prior to like a pull-up, push-up, squat, body weight exercise session. And you'll get like 20 reps into a body weight squat set and your legs are burning like hell, like you have a 300-pound barbell on your back. And it's very simple. You're essentially just like restricting blood flow. And it's a cool way to feel like you're lifting really heavy weights, even if you're just doing like body weight only training. They're called blood flow restriction straps.
Awesome.
Is there any Any dietary tips for reducing cortisol?
There are some herbs that can help. Some of the more notable ones would be like reishi mushroom extract. Ashwagandha is another. There's a supplement called phosphatidylserine that's very, very effective at lowering cortisol levels. Cortisol is something that is elevated in response to inflammation. And two of the best ways to increase inflammation would be high amounts of processed sugar consumption and high amounts of vegetable oil consumption. So if you can, from one end, consume some herbs or some compounds that help to regulate cortisol, like ashwagandha or reishi or phosphatidylserine, and then at the same time limit processed sugars and limit vegetable oils, you'd be covering a lot of your bases in terms of dietary control of cortisol.
Cool. So I got a pretty complicated question here from my buddy Mike, who's been following your work, and he's a fellow biohacker enthusiast and all that. So if you have any questions about the question, I probably won't be able to answer, but I'm going to give this a shot. So he read a recent paper showing that senescent cells hyperaccumulate iron, and he noticed that cancer cells have the same feature, and this is one of the reasons that high-dose IV vitamin C and the anti-malarial artemisinin are being studied as anti-cancer therapies. So they selectively oxidize cancer cells by reacting with the high iron levels. And he thinks, do you think these could work as senolytics as well?
Yeah, they potentially could, because, iron, which I used to think was, as an endurance athlete, racing triathlon and stuff, I used to always look at my hemoglobin, my hematocrit, my iron, my ferritin, and I'd be thinking, well, if it's high, that must be good, because iron is one of the ways that my hemoglobin is carrying oxygen to deliver it to tissue. But it turns out that excess iron, which a lot of guys actually have an issue with, is called hemochromatosis. That's actually an oxidant. It almost acts like a rusting molecule within the human body, and can result in the formation of what are called peroxide radicals, which is essentially like hydrogen peroxide type of compounds within the body that can cause damage to tissue and also play a role in the development of senescent cells that can lead to accelerated aging, or the growth of cancerous cells, or angiogenesis to cancerous cells, or that would be like feeding of new blood vessels to cancerous cells. So the idea would be, if you can limit or lower iron, we know that one of the worst things to do if you're taking an iron supplement is to take it with a vitamin C supplement, because vitamin C will limit the absorption of the iron. The same thing could be said for, say, things that have phytic acid in them, like grains would not be something you'd consume with an iron supplement. But if you can figure out ways to decrease your iron, it could be a longevity enhancing mechanism and also an anti-cancer mechanism. In my opinion, even though there are a whole bunch of companies selling iron binders and iron detoxification protocols, if a guy has elevated iron and elevated ferritin, I think going out and giving blood is the best way to reduce that. And it's cool, because you're also doing humankind a service, right? Like, you're providing good blood, and then you're also lowering your iron levels by providing blood. And it's also why men have a bigger issue with hemochromatosis or high iron compared to women, because any woman who's not postmenopausal is a lot of times bleeding every month. And guys, unless we're like heavy endurance athletes that have a high red blood cell turnover, or say maybe you could say like an MMA fighter, a warrior, or somebody who might be wounded a lot, we're not bleeding that much. So the idea would be, you give blood as almost like a life extending and cancer controlling strategy. So yeah, there is something to that thought pattern.
Yeah, interesting. So are we close to, or maybe we're even there, but I'm not aware of it, like a full genetic sort of panel and analysis on like ancestral diet potential and exercise regime kind of stuff? Like, I've heard you talk about it a little bit on the show, but are we at the point where we could send, like, let's say our blood in somewhere and get like a full blown sort of, analysis to help with that? It's like diet is so specialized, and you've got all this keto versus vegan stuff, and like, I'm trying different things myself, and it's just hard to figure out what really does work best. Like, it's hard to analyze that on yourself.
Yeah. Well, from a genetic standpoint, yes, that's a simple, and this technology has existed, with not just 23andMe, but Ancestry and some of these other websites. being able to trace your ancestry is very simple. That's a simple salivary protocol. And a lot of times these salivary protocols also show you some things like we were talking about earlier, like predisposition to celiac disease, or how well a job your body does handling caffeine, or how well a job your body does handling saturated fats.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking at not only where you came from, and then it's pretty easy via a little bit of Googling to see what those areas have eaten for thousands of years. And then you kind of fill in the gaps by saying, okay, do I have any genetic predispositions? Like, even though maybe I come from a Northern European ancestry, and I know that butter and lard and things like that were part of that diet, maybe I also carry the gene that dictates that I have a little bit of a deleterious response to saturated fats, the ApoE34 or ApoE44 variant. Well, I'm going to eat a diet that is rich in meats and fish and tubers and like salted and fermented foods, and a lot of these things my Northern European ancestors would have eaten, but I'm going to limit the butter and the lard to no more than about 10% of my total dietary intake. And then you could take that one step further and say, okay, I'm also going to get, say, like one of these Cyrex food allergy panels I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And maybe it turns out that the green beans and the pumpkins my Northern European ancestors would have eaten, and maybe one variant of fish, like let's say salmon, my body actually is allergic to. For some reason, I produce an antibody response to those. So yeah, I'm going to follow that diet that my ancestors ate, but I'm not only going to limit the saturated fats because of what I found out about my genetics, but I'm going to limit my intake of salmon and green beans and pumpkin too. And then finally, you could get a blood test. You could see, okay, in addition to that, turns out from my blood test, I'm low in vitamin D, I'm low in magnesium, and I'm low in vitamin B12. So I'm going to eat what my Northern European ancestors ate. I'm going to limit my saturated fats, not going to do the green beans, the salmon, and the pumpkin. And then the supplements that I take are going to be vitamin D, magnesium, and a vitamin B12 complex. Right. And then boom, you've all of a sudden got a pretty good idea of how to customize your diet. And frankly, it's not like rocket science. It's pretty easy to get these tests, look at them, see what am I low in, or what am I genetically predisposed to not do well with, what my ancestors eat, boom, done. And then you know whether or not that ketogenic or carnivore or vegan diet that your neighbor is eating that helped them lose 20 pounds is good for them, but not good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Hey, can you talk about what you're doing instead of the young blood transfer type thing, like sending your blood somewhere else?
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that young blood transfer is nuts. Like, I interviewed those people from the Young Blood Institute.
Yeah.
I was blown away. They were showing me pictures of the blood bags from like these Alzheimer's patients and Parkinson's patients where they were taking their plasma out, and it looked like freaking like nasty ass oatmeal. And after like 10 treatments of recycling their plasma with that from a young, healthy donor, their plasma was just like clear and pristine, and the Alzheimer's symptoms were going away. I mean, literally, like almost like reversal or curing of a disease.
Wow.
Unfortunately, that's like a $50,000 protocol to go down to the Bay Area and do something like that. So
plus, it's also a bit creepy too. I mean,
I can't say there's a good replacement for that. I mean,
you can't, or you can.
Yeah, I can't. I mean,
I thought you were sending your own blood somewhere and getting it reworked to get the stem cells out of there, and then.
Oh yeah, I could tell you what that is in a second. But you could say that like giving blood could help. Doing the sauna frequently, because when you're turning over a lot of sweat, you're turning over a lot of blood. Exercising, just like doing a lot of these things that just kind of recycles your blood normally.
Yeah.
But what I did was I have done two protocols that kind of sort of involved like modifying my blood.
Mm-hmm.
One was that I went to New York City and I had a pint of my blood taken out and then stressed overnight, like and in this case, stressed with cold. And when blood gets stressed, it just dumps, the red blood cells dump a whole bunch of stem cells called adult pluripotent stem cells into the system. And they're like these embryonic like cells that essentially make like young blood. And then you wake up the next day and you go back into the doc and they re-inject that back into your body. And then the other protocol I've done that's kind of similar, and there's another doctor down in South Carolina that does this one, is he'll take your blood out and he'll take about a pint of blood or so. and concentrate that with ozone, which is a really, really potent antioxidant, and then inject the ozone back into your body, but it's mixed already with your own blood. So there are some protocols that kind of sort of fall into the same camp, but it's not like you're actually getting the blood from a young, healthy donor injected into your body. But yeah, I mean, doing things like, umbilical stem cells or placental stem cells or amniotic fluid stem cells, that really is, something from a young, healthy baby going into your system. So it is kind of sort of similar.
Yeah.
Just, it's not quite as intensive as what they're doing at that Young Blood Institute.
Yeah.
Is that like what they're doing with the root canals too?
I think it's similar. Yeah. They take blood out when they do root canals up here. There's a naturopathic dentist that puts the blood into the centrifuge and then pulls out the white blood cells and stem cells and pops the gel back in the hole to help it heal.
Yeah, it's like a platelet-rich plasma. And also, that's probably mixed with stem cells.
Yeah. So why is there not a lot of NAD plus IV anymore? Like I've heard, like years ago, I think I heard you talk about that, and like we've got some vitamin IVs down the road and stuff like that, and people doing some of those protocols. But how come we don't hear a lot about that anymore?
Well, they're expensive and they're uncomfortable, right? And even though they're the best way to boost the levels of NAD, very, very good mitochondrial protectant that declines remarkably as you age. You have like 90% NAD loss by the time you're in your mid 70s. The idea is you kind of top off and replace those NAD levels. Fasting can help to increase NAD. The intake of fermented foods can help to increase NAD. Exercise can help. Sauna can help. But when it comes to actual supplementation with NAD, mainlining it via the bloodstream in an IV is the best way to increase your levels of bioavailable NAD.
Yeah.
But as these supplement companies have arisen that are selling either NR or
nicotinamide
NMN,
riboside,
yeah, or even sublingual NAD. Most of these NR bypasses the first pass by the liver, so you could take that as a capsule, and it's going to result in some bioavailable NAD. If you take NMN or NAD in supplemental form, usually it's in a form that's kind of dissolved under the tongue, so that it bypasses liver metabolism. And they're less expensive than IVs. They're obviously more comfortable than IVs because you tend to get like some burning and some nausea when you get the NAD injected. But they're not as efficacious. However, they're far more available to the general population and far more affordable. And then kind of in the middle are these NAD patches. A lot of people don't know about these, but you can get NAD delivered via the skin in an NAD patch. And I kind of opt, so I'll get an NAD IV about once a month.
Oh, wow.
And then what I do is I put on one of those patches about once a week, and that gives me about 500 milligrams of NAD that, again, bypasses all the digestion and everything, and then bypasses any issues with oral bioavailability. And I dick around every once in a while, because all these companies are always sending me supplements. So I think upstairs in my pantry right now, I've got sublingual NAD and like an NMN sublingual powder. And then I think I have the True Niagen capsules up there too. So I've got other things I can kind of mess around with. But ultimately, my protocol right now is I like to get an IV about once a month and then do one of those patches about once a week.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, even the NR is pretty expensive as far as a supplement goes. I think it's probably, if you're going to do the right, a couple capsules a day, it's like $40-$50 a month, I think. So
yeah, that's why I think everybody should cover their bases, move, do the sauna, some fermented foods, work in some fasting. And
So I also want to mention before I forget that most of the stuff you've talked about, you've got episodes with leading experts in the world on all this stuff. I mean, you talked about the estrogenic thing is one of your great podcasts on your website. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, and the one thing I wanted to mention is that was really relieving for me. And when I started listening to you years ago and getting into sort of more of this health and wellness and sort of biohacking thing, I mean, I was really surprised at how open you and some of your colleagues were to alternative healing and therapies, and whether it's just meditation. I mean, it was really refreshing to hear that you guys, you follow the science a lot on all this stuff, and you're always looking at the reports and the science, but you're also very open to a lot of the stuff that can't be measured so easily by science.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way that it kind of always has been when it comes to affecting change, but being ahead of what might be accepted in mainstream medicine. You know, what was it? Semmelweis was the doctor who was literally like vilified and sent off to a mental institution when he raised the idea that surgeons should perhaps be washing their hands as they're going back and forth from like operating on somebody to doing a C-section on a mom. And people are just like, this dude's a kook. What's he talking about? Like, wash your hands. It's inconvenient. It doesn't work. He was a young doctor. You know, his lab coat wasn't as long as the other doctors, which is how they kind of judged the intelligence and superiority of a physician back in those days. And he wound up dying in prison, or like in a mental institution, for suggesting that folks wash their hands prior to surgery. Right. And now that's just common practice. So, yeah, I think, you know, if you stick only to the stuff that's just like completely tried and true with a decade of human clinical research behind it, you do kind of limit yourself as far as generating some interesting ideas that are more based on case studies or anecdotal data. And I'm not closed to that idea. I mean, I'm not even closed to ideas that are completely rooted at this point, you know, in things that simply can't be proven, like a lot of the stuff that folks like Bruce Lipton or Joe Dispenza talk about, like the fact that the cells and the tissues can respond to emotions or thoughts or belief patterns, or that, you know, perhaps things like bone cancer could be rooted in hate or anger or bitterness. Like, none of that shit's provable. But, you know, I mean, hell, I'm a Christian, right? Like, I believe that God made the planet like 12,000 years ago, and doesn't get much more kooky faith-based than that. So I'm kind of, you know, I'm kind of open to a lot of ideas that are even just based purely on, well, you know, this is just something that you know, that we know. We can't quite explain it, but we know that people who are full of hate and bitterness and rage and anger tend to have this higher incidence of bone cancer. So there's something between like the emotion and the cancer. But yeah, I mean, I'm not close to ideas that can't necessarily be proven, at least at this point in science.
Well, a couple of my favorite shows that you did were with these like chi pushers, like Shaolin monks from I mean, it's just right out of a movie, you know, these guys that went up there, forced their way, not forced, but, you know, insisted that they go in and study with these guys, and then they come out just pushing huge amounts of chi. And I mean, it's like just straight out of like a, you know, fantasy movie. Unbelievable episodes with those guys.
Yeah, but perfect example. I mean, like anybody who's done holotropic breath work, you know, about once a month, I do this long holotropic breath work session in my sauna. My pineal gland just like churns out DMT. I get to the same point with that as I do with like high dose psilocybin. And like, we know that the body and the breath and the emotions can produce some pretty impressive chemical changes on not just us, but based on the electrical signals that the human body produces, those around us. So yeah, a lot of this stuff kind of flies under the radar and is scoffed at by mainstream medicine and mainstream science. But I still think that just because that's the case, we can't or shouldn't feel as though we need to ignore it or not dabble in it or find some interesting tidbits of goodness and benefit from it.
That's great. I think that's a really healthy attitude.
That's like the placebo, you know, it's like I say, it's all just different variations of the placebo effect. That is just an annoyance to the medical system.
Even though they use it as a measurement. I mean,
if I were to convince you that spam that's on your desk was going to increase your IQ, and I gave you a pre and post cognitive function test or cognitive intelligence test, I guarantee you do better on a post test after you ate the spam.
This is what we tell people
I don't think pork and meat do shit for that.
We try and tell people that if they support the show, that they'll just feel better. Life will just be better.
Listen to the Grimerica show and you'll be smarter and healthier.
Yeah. So before we run out of time here, why don't you tell people about what what you do and your Kion company and your podcast, and just get a chance to give people the rundown there, because it's amazing work, and really appreciate all you do.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I got a podcast and a blog at bengreenfieldfitness.com. Try to interview some physicians and scientists and talk about interesting stuff, primarily in the realm of like life extension and health and performance and fat loss, nutrition, supplementation, things like that. And then I also own and operate a supplements company where I formulate, supplement formulations for things like joint health or fat loss or muscle gain, et cetera. And then the name of that company is Kion. And so that's at get Kion.com, get Kion.com. So those are kind of my two companies, are BenGreenfieldFitness.com and getKion.com. And yeah, that's it.
Well, you're also, a guinea pig on your own stuff too. I mean, I love the way you try everything out yourself as well. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Not dead yet, so it hasn't blown up in my face too bad.
Right. That's right. Any regrets with that self-prescribed stuff at all?
No. I wish I had some sexy story where I really fucked myself up. But honestly, anything I've messed around with has always made me feel better. I mean, even freaking, I got a bunch of, publicity last year for injecting stem cells into my dick, and people are like, oh, you're going to get dick cancer, your dick's going to turn black and fall off. But honestly, my erections got better and my orgasms doubled in length and my libido went up, and yeah, sure, shit could have gone wrong, but it all went pretty well. So
Nice.
so far nothing's gone.
Right on.
Is a holotropic breath work, is that similar to what Wim Hof is doing?
Yeah, that's similar to what we were doing there. We were just
away in
Colorado.
Doing Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah.
But it'd be doing it for 90 minutes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we just went through that with one of Wim Hof's certified trainers. We were doing it every morning when we were at a little getaway there in Colorado. It was fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right on, Ben. Is there anything else you want to mention before we let you go?
I think that's it, dudes. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your help, man. It's awesome
it's
chatting
great.
with you. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Cool.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Okay.
Catch you guys later.
Okay, take care.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the day. Got the mouse there. That was a chat. One and only Ben Greenfield. So that's exciting. I mean, we were driving. Was it when we were driving to Minneapolis?
It was CAC. No, it was CAC number 2 when we
Wasn't it CAC number 1?
No. Oh, yeah, it was. It was 2 years ago then. Yeah.
I thought it was even pre-CAC. I thought it was when we went down to visit Brad in Spokane.
Yeah, it might have been.
That's when we were listening to him talk to Rick Ross or whatever, right?
Yeah. It's really his podcast is overwhelming with the information. It's really, you kind of got to pick what you want out of it, because you could just get overwhelmed with all the health and wellness tips and all that. And you were tweeting him, and I was actually looking for supplement stores in Spokane, I think.
Yeah,
that's
he lives
right near there.
Yeah.
That's when I was looking for the NR, the nicotinamide riboside.
That was before he blew up.
Before what?
That was before he blew up. Because I think he tweeted us back some stories, didn't he?
No, he was blown up before then. Yeah. Yeah, for quite a few years now. He's a super athlete too. He just won this competition. I think it was a bow hunting competition or something like that. Is that what he said?
Bonners.
Yeah, close to
Bonners Ferry. That's one of my favorite portals into the USA.
The thing I like about him is he's not just a true athlete, but he practices what he preaches, and he tries shit on himself, and he's super smart. You wonder how he retains all this information. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, huge thanks to Ben for coming on the show.
Inspiring.
Yeah, inspiring. Check out his Twitter account at Ben Greenfield.
Problem with that today.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there even
wearing
a
those shades in the studio? Is that why?
It's sunny
outside.
I don't know.
We didn't even get a chance to talk to him about sun and light, and I wanted to ask him all these other questions too. But
he's a busy guy. But that's okay. Now that we broke the ice, we'll be able to have him back on again. I'm sure
maybe.
We'll have him on down the road. We can get into the photons and the brotons. Big thanks to people who support the show. Check out grimerica.ca/support so you can live longer, feel better, and just have a general lightness about you. And we would really appreciate it. You can join the ranks of the people that pay for all the bandwidth and the table and the mics, all that fantastic stuff.
Cords that go all the time.
Cords that are constantly breaking, all that fantastic stuff. Boost your karma, grimerica.ca/support. There's a bunch of stuff in the show notes that's super helpful. Graham takes the time to do the show notes, and he has all the links in there. You can just go there, click on them, do it.
On most of the stuff we talked about too. Tonight's episode, we have he mentioned a few books and a few things in there, so I'll put links into those books. So if people want to find out what it is, because I know what it's like when you're listening to something and you can't take notes about highlighted
Absolutely.
topics. Just go into the notes, click on it, and you get a link to the book.
Yeah, while you're there, review the show, share the show, tell your friends about this motherfucker, sign people up for the newsletter. What else? Is that it?
Sure.
That's it. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Started writing down a list of things to do. Number 1 on the list of things to do was to write a list of things to do. Number 2 on the list, a little more nihilist, wrote down the cake is a lie. There is no spoon. Johnny flipped out, they put him in a rubber room. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Started to carve my initials into a 150-foot tree. Forgot who I was, where I was, cut my hand and it began to bleed. Was only looking to leave my mark in the bark in the park, now I'm in agony. I have no name, my legacy is written in the sparks in your brain. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Johnny crumpled up, threw away his list of things to do. Instead he got to jotting down his lifeblood legacy manifesto. Live by principles of peace, mix it with charity. Don't leave the next generation a world of scarcity. Johnny wasn't a commie, he was my fellow man. Johnny wasn't a commie, he was my fellow man. Johnny wasn't a Nazi, he was a firebrand. Johnny wasn't a Nazi, he was a firebrand. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Grimerica.ca/support. Grimerica.ca/support. Oh, fee-fi, fiddly-I-O. And tell them Felix sent you there.
The Grimerica Congress is now in session. Welcome, congressmen and congresswomen. You have been invited to the special sitting of this Congress because of your donations to one of the greatest podcasts in the land, the Grimerica podcast. And now I invite you to please take your seats as we welcome our chairpersons, Mr. Darren Grimes and Mr. Graham Dunlop. And welcome to
the Grimerica Black Budget Support Feed.
Come in studio. The black budget has now been approved by Congress. The black budget has now been approved by Congress.
Roger that. The request